My name is Kari Leo. I'm really excited to be here with you today and represent Microsoft and talk about something that for many of you may be new. And I hope if it's new that you get excited about this presentation and that we can collaborate going forward. I have a really cool job. I get to work at Microsoft, a company that cares about sustainability, about environmental sustainability, and I get to work on integrating this sustainability across our processes, across our planning, and across our hardware design processes. It's one of the most exciting things that I can do, and I hope that we all here at OCP can have folks like myself that can collaborate with engineers going forward on sustainability. So today I just want to talk to you a little bit about Microsoft's goals when it comes to sustainability, what we're doing in cloud, and then a little bit about how we can collaborate on this going forward. So at Microsoft, we really see climate change, and I think many of you also do, as one of the biggest challenges humanity has faced. And also our response to it is critical in order for us to actually stay within the global warming targets that are going to enable us to live on this planet going forward. A recent UN report that came out in August make it very clear that we have to take action now. We have to reduce the carbon that we are emitting into the atmosphere, and we have to do it collectively. We're also creating way too much waste. We're polluting the waters. We are polluting oceans. We're destroying ecosystems, and this is something that we all collectively have to do something about. At Microsoft, we believe we can, and we believe if we can work on the cross-section of technology and science, we have a huge opportunity to create a thriving community in the future. And this is not just something we talk about or something that we do at a small scale. This is really at the core of our business. We work on it from an operational perspective, but we also really try to leverage the technology that we develop to enable others to actually make sustainable choices, to make changes in their operations, but also develop technology that can help us really enable reducing the carbon that we're emitting, as well as moving away from all the e-waste that we are creating. So with that, I wanted just to share some of the lofty goals that Microsoft set itself back in 2020. Very grateful again to be working for a company that say, you know what, we have to set some really high goals here if we're going to actually be able to make some change. So we've decided that we need to be carbon negative by 2030. That includes by 2025 to run completely on renewable energy. We're also working on solving for the carbon issue in our supply chain. So if you look at the emissions across all of Microsoft, it is not just what we're emitting, what we call scope 1 and 2, that comes directly from our operation, but the brunt of the emissions are actually sitting in our supply chain. So we're also looking at reducing by at least 50% all the emissions that are associated with our supply chain. So that contributes to this carbon negative goal, where we're looking to basically in 2030 remove more carbon than we are emitting. The next one is on water. We want to be water positive. We want to be replenishing more water than we're actually using. Next is on zero waste. We want to be a zero waste company by 2030, and how that's pertinent to this conversation is reuse. So looking at how can we reuse hardware, we have a 90% reuse goal when it comes to our cloud hardware by 2030 as well. And the last thing is we're working on building a planetary computer, and that is looking at how we can manage, model, and monitor our ecosystems on the planet, and also protect more land than we use. So when we look at this from a cloud hardware perspective, a data center perspective, we're really trying to do this from an integrative and holistic way. We start looking at sustainability and incorporating it from design when we're designing our data centers, as well as when we're designing our hardware. We're looking at opportunities to reduce carbon when it comes to material optimizations. Is there a lower carbon material that we can use? Can we use less of a certain material but have the same performance? Can we increase the recycled content of this material? Can we move to a different type of plastic? Maybe we can use ocean plastic. Our friends in the consumer business just launched a mouse that was using ocean plastic. So we're always trying to innovate on the material side, in addition to, of course, our lofty renewable energy goals. Supply chain and engaging with our suppliers is another huge element that is crucial for us. As I mentioned, embodied carbon, scope 3. In order for us to achieve our goals, we really need to work together and collectively. And so I'll talk a little bit more about how we're doing that with our suppliers. And then Lastly, of course, looking at optimizing end of life. I know a lot of folks here at OCP are looking at those solutions as well, thinking about how can we reuse, how can we use our products longer, how can we harvest components, and instead of just taking them and recycling them, how can we put it into other products? So we're really trying to take a holistic approach to sustainability. A couple of things that we've already achieved. I mean, we started these goals back in 2020. However, Microsoft has really been on a sustainability journey ever since back in 2012 when we became carbon negative. But in the last couple of years, we've done a couple of things, and I'm just highlighting a few. So one is the launch of a sustainable data center region in Arizona. Obviously, the water situation there is quite dire, so there's a couple of elements there that we're trying to incorporate. We're working with Long Road Energy to increase the renewable energy available for our data center, but also actually really working on solutions that will increase the availability of renewable energy on the grid. This is not just happening in Arizona, obviously, but across the board where that is needed. And then another really exciting thing that's happening there is looking at how we've been able to figure out how we can use zero water for cooling for more than half of the year using adiabatic cooling. Microsoft Circular Centers, I'll talk a little bit more about that. That is really at the core for us to drive a circular economy, so shifting away from the linear economy. I'll share with that in a slide. The next thing is we are on the path to decarbonizing our supply chain. We've started introducing in our contracts requirements for our suppliers to report their carbon emissions, and I think that's one of the things that maybe many of you have already also seen requests for people you're working with, suppliers, or folks you're purchasing from, that increasingly there are now asks for you to actually disclose the information associated with your emissions. And then lastly, of course, we have some amazing people at Microsoft Research within our data center teams that are really coming up with some really cool and innovative ideas. Immersion cooling, we'll talk about that in a split second. I'm sure that's very familiar to folks here. Really, it has an opportunity to drive sustainability, as well as some progress we've made in hydrogen fuel cells to replace our diesel engines for backup generation of power at a data center. So those are just a couple of examples of what we've done so far. We'll make sure to send you more information, but it's really exciting to see everyone coming together and trying to make progress in this area. So I mentioned circular centers. What are those? So we launched the first one back last year, and it's really instrumental for us to meeting our zero waste goal and driving to up to 90% reuse of our assets. So through the Circular Center, we'll be able to leverage what we call an intelligent routing system to really maximize the assets' lifetime and enable them and understand what assets are coming out, and create a demand system to figure out where they can go in order to both maximize value as well as sustainability benefits. The circular centers are, as I mentioned, really allowing us to pivot our cloud business towards a circular economy and away from a linear model. And to me, it's a critical piece in order for us to decouple our growth in our industry with the extraction of materials and damaging the environment. You can't be at OCP and not mention liquid cooling or immersion cooling. It's a very popular topic here. Obviously also something that our team has worked really hard on, and for me, this is a prime example of one of the principles in circular economy, which is, how can you do more with less? How can you use less? Well, in this scenario, this is an example where they're using liquid cooling to push silicon performance to its max via overclocking. And so here we're able to generate more VMs out of the same chipset. So you don't have to produce as many chips, and you're also actually able to reduce the use phase energy that's needed and the embodied carbon, or meaning because you're producing less chips, you actually are saving some carbon in that aspect as well. So there's both water saving opportunities with immersion cooling as well as carbon saving opportunities. The last thing I wanted to mention as a Microsoft initiative and an effort to drive sustainability is kind of not on the hardware side, but is really where we're trying to use our power as a large company in the world and our brand, where we've had to figure out how do we measure, how do we understand our data when it comes to sustainability. We've had to figure that out for ourselves, and we recently launched what we call Microsoft Cloud for Sustainability, which is a software as a service solution that is enabling us to collect the data, have it all in one place, enable much smoother reporting of data. I think, again, everyone's going to have to report their carbon emissions soon. So this solution is enabling that visibility in a one-stop solution, and then, of course, driving action. Because I think at the end of the day, we can measure as much as we want, but really what we need to do is we need to derive insights from that data and actually go and make some changes in how we're doing things. So it's a very exciting product. And for me, it's also, Microsoft used to be only a software company. Now we do all of the things. But this is really where we are empowering others to also do this better, and so we can accelerate the path to net zero together. So, we do a lot in Microsoft. It's very impossible to cover all of this in a short period of time, but this is an open invitation to all of you to start your sustainability journey if you haven't already. OCP is an amazing place to do that. There are so many people you can talk to, companies you can talk to. Really encourage all of you tomorrow to go to, there's a whole bunch of sessions in the Wednesday track on sustainability, not just from Microsoft, but really from a whole bunch of other companies within OCP that have collaborated on sustainability solutions. And I think this is also the only way that we're going to figure this out, is figuring out together. I know I've said that many times, but it is very true, hence why I need to emphasize it. Another thing to think about is there are so many people in this room that have solved really, really hard problems in the past. How about you take those skills and all that experience that you have and you try to solve some of the problems when it comes to the environmental sustainability issues that we have? You can totally do it. Think about what is it that you're working on? How can you incorporate sustainability into that? What is the core competency of your company? What are the hotspots of your company, and where are the emissions associated? Are you using a lot of water? Start mapping that out. And that leads me to the third one. Start measuring. Start thinking about, okay, we're making this new thing. Well, how is this new thing going to impact the environment differently than this old thing? Start just creating that visibility. Sunshine is the best disinfectant, some Supreme Court justice said once, and I think that's really important. People are also a little bit afraid. They're afraid to start measuring because they're like, oh, what if it's bad? Well, let's just start by shining a light on it, figuring out where we're at, and then we can start tracking it. And I think that's something we all have to work with within our own companies, is figuring out how do we create visibility, how do we educate, because this is a new language for many of us and for many of our leaders. I remember when I first started working in cloud and I was on the call talking to some person and he said, oh, sustain, you mean sustained computing? And I'm like, no, sustainability, environmental sustainability, right? So it's a journey we're all on. We gotta do it fast and we gotta do it together. And so that's just my last kind of ask here is, share information, share your learning, share your data. We have a session tomorrow on life cycle assessment. One of the key obstacles to getting life cycle assessment right is the lack of data available in order to actually assess. So I know it's hard. It's, we can't think about sustainability the way we've thought about a lot of these other things we've done in the past to use it as a competitive advantage. We really have to start thinking, okay, we have to do this together. I'm going to have to share my data. I'm going to have to work with this other company because that's the only way we're going to make this change at the speed that we need to make the change. So that's all from me today. I hope, if nothing else, that you've been inspired to think about what you can do a little bit differently. How can you start having that conversation? That's actually one thing I want to actually encourage you. When you have a conversation with your next supplier or with your next, whomever you're going to collaborate with, ask questions related to sustainability, whether it's in your technical engagement or in your strategic engagement, because that is the only way we're going to start learning and making changes together. So I invite you on that journey. Come find me if you want to talk more. Really appreciate all of you being here today. Thank you.